Today we're going to get introduced to trigonometric ratios. So you're given a right angle triangle where you're given two sides and you have to find the third side. You're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to do that. Well, the side that's across with the 90-degree angle, that's always your hypotenuse or your C. So always make sure that's your C. The rest can be A and B, and let's fill in the values. Now let's find the squares of the numbers, so you end up with something like this. Next, let's move the 225 over to the other side to solve for x, and we end up getting x squared is equal to 81.25. To get rid of the square, we have to square root both sides, and you get your final answer where x is equal to 9.01 centimeters. So that's how you would solve this. Now suppose you're given a triangle where you're given one side and one angle. How would you go about finding the third side? Well, you cannot use the Pythagorean theorem in this case, so you're going to have to use something called trigonometric ratios. Before we get started with the actual ratios, let's learn how to label a triangle. We have a triangle here that we are going to label, and to do that, we're going to use something called the angle of reference. In this case, we are going to use angle A as our reference point. So we're going to use that angle to label the other sides. Now, notice there's a 90-degree angle, and you know from before that any side across from the 90-degree angle is your hypotenuse. So that side is labeled. Now, going back to our angle of reference, let's look at the side that's right across from it. This side right here is called the opposite, because it's opposite to your angle of reference. Okay, now let's look at the side that's right next to our angle of reference. This is called the adjacent, because it's right next to it. Now let's try this on a different triangle. In this case, we are again going to start off with angle of reference, but we're going to make angle B our angle of reference. So this is what we're going to use to label the sides. But hold up, notice there's a 90-degree angle. So right off the bat, you know the side across from it is your hypotenuse. Okay, so look back at our angle of reference. The side that's across from this angle of reference is your opposite side. So that part's written. Now let's focus on the side that's right next to the angle, which happens to be the adjacent side. So here we have labeled all our sides. When solving right triangles, you're going to be given numbers that you're going to use to make a ratio or fraction. Depending on the ratio, we either use the function sine, cosine, or tangent to solve the triangle. And to help us remember that, we're going to use a mnemonic called SOHCAHTOA. Now the spelling of this is very important, so memorize it. Now let's focus on the SO part. So you're given a triangle. The S stands for sine, meaning the function that you're going to use. The OH actually represents the ratio you're going to make out of it. Now because O comes first, meaning opposite, that's going to go on top. And H comes second, meaning the hypotenuse, that will go at the bottom. So when you're given a triangle and you're given the hypotenuse side and the opposite side, you are going to use sine to help you solve for it. Now let's focus on the ka part. So again, you're given a triangle, and the C represents the cosine, meaning the function you're going to solve for it. The A and H represent sides that you're going to make a ratio out of. A comes first, so that means adjacent, that goes on top. H comes second, so hypotenuse, that goes at the bottom. So again, if you're given a triangle with the hypotenuse and the adjacent, you are going to use cosine or cos as the function to solve for it. And now, last but not least, let's focus on the TOA part. So again, you're given a triangle. The T stands for the function, meaning tan. The O and the A are going to help you make the ratio. O for opposite, because it comes first, it goes on top. A for adjacent, it comes second, so it goes at the bottom. So if you are given a triangle and you're given the adjacent side and the opposite side, you are going to use tan to help you solve for this. Now, this might still seem a little confusing, so we're going to use a couple of questions just so you can see how to use this. We are given three triangles and we have to figure out which function to use. So to start off, we're going to write the mnemonic SOHCAHTOA. So let's do that. SOH for so, CAH for ka, and TOA for TOA. Okay, let's look at our first triangle right here on the left. And notice they've given us an angle. This angle is called theta, and that will be our angle of reference. Now let's label the sides that are given. So the side across from the 90 degree is the hypotenuse. So we'll write H, capital H for hypotenuse. And the side that's right next to it, that's your adjacent, or just plain A will do. Now notice I didn't label the third side, only label the sides you're given. So we have A and H. Which of these has that on SOHCAHTOA? Right over here, this has the A and the H. So we are going to use the C, meaning cosine, to solve for it. So start out by writing cos and the angle beside it. And because A comes first, you're going to write that on top for the ratio part. And H comes second, so you're going to put that at the bottom. And now let's fill in the values. So cos theta is equal to, A happens to be 4 and H happens to be 6. And that's how you make your ratio. So that one is done. Let's move on to the second triangle. Again, look at the angle they've given you. So this right here is the angle of reference. And only label the two sides that have a number. So this side right across from it is the opposite, or your O. And the side across from the 90-degree angle, which we know happens to be the hypotenuse. Or just plain H will do. Now the two sides given to us are opposite and the hypotenuse. So where do you see that in SOHCAHTOA, the O and the H? Right over here with the SO. So we're going to use sine. We're going to start out by writing sin for sine and write the angle beside it. Now the O comes first, you're going to put that on top. And then H comes second, so you're going to put that at the bottom. And now let's fill in the numbers. Sine theta is equal to, well, O happens to be 5 and H happens to be 12. And there's our ratio. Now let's finally move on to our last triangle. So again, here's the angle of reference. Let's label the sides. So the side right across from the angle is our opposite side, or O. And the side that's right next to our angle is the adjacent, or just plain A. Now looking at SOHCAHTOA, which one has the O and the A? That would have to be TOA. It has the O and the A. So we're going to use tan. So start out by writing tan, and the angle next to it is equal to, O comes first, so we're going to write O on top. And then A comes second, so we're going to write A at the bottom. And now let's fill in the values. So tan of theta is equal to, O is 11 and A is 1. And there is our ratio for our third triangle. Now the last thing we're going to do is practice using our scientific calculators. Determine the value of tan 35 degrees to the nearest 1,000. Now every calculator is different, so on your calculator you might have to press the tan button and then the number 35. So 10 and then 35. Or again, depending on your calculator, you might have to press 35 and then 10. Okay, so check that out to see what your calculator does. And when you do calculate it, because it's to the nearest 1,000, that means we need it to the nearest 3 decimal places, we end up getting this as our answer. It's around 0.700. Now this is the answer you should be getting, so make sure that you are using your calculator to get this answer. If you don't get this answer, let me know. Now let's try to find the cos of 55 degrees to the nearest 1,000. Again, depending on your calculator, you might have to press cos and then 55, or you might have to press 55 and then cos to find the answer. And when you do that, your answer should come about 0.574. And finally, let's try to find the sine of 85 degrees to the nearest 1,000. When you plug that into your calculator, you should get about 0.996 as your answer. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today. So work on the worksheet, and if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. Bye!